Okay, welcome everyone. We're very appreciative of you taking the time to join us today. We're excited about the presentation, have a great lineup of panelists today, and I think a lot of really useful information for the field. As the title says, this is part 2 of a 2-part series that we've been doing, focusing on what do our communities really need to do to reposition themselves to best meet the needs and expectations of consumers moving into the future. I'll tell you a little bit more about what part 1 was in just a moment or two. But first, before we get into too much of the content, let's step back and just make sure we cover some of the logistics. We will be presenting straight through, but you can ask questions at any point, and then we'll address those questions at the end. You do that, you ask your question by, if you look at the control bar for Zoom, you'll see an entry there, got something to click on there that's labeled Q&A. If you click on that, it'll open up a dialog box and you can just type your question in there, and we'll track all the questions as we go and be ready to address that when the main part of the presentation is over. We do ask that you not put the questions into the chat dialog box. That does happen sometimes. It's much better to keep them organized in the Q&A section. So thank you for that. And to respond in advance to the question that we always get asked most often, will we be able to get the slides to this or recording of this? And the answer is yes, absolutely. A copy of the full recording or a link to the full recording of this webinar will be sent to all of you who attended, and in fact to everyone who registered for the webinar. So absolutely something that we look to do is make sure the content is available to everyone in the field. So with that, our game plan for today is we'll start with introductions. I'm going to spend just a moment talking about why this is an important topic for today and this year and this decade. Then John Franklin will lead us through a discussion of the importance of social connection with a little bit of the science behind that. Kyle Robinson will walk us through how technology can be very effective as a tool to augment social connection and engagement programs. And then we're really appreciative that Gwen and Cameron have joined us today from Presbyterian Homes of Georgia, and we'll be able to share firsthand examples of how they've put these principles into action in their communities. So again, we're pretty excited about the opportunity here today. But with that as a little bit of a background, I would like to give each of our speakers an opportunity to introduce themselves in just a little bit more detail. So, John?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. I'm the founder and principal of Pearl Creek Advisors. Been in existence for about 18 months now. Prior to that, I was an investment banker for 30 plus years, serving both the hospital and senior living industries. And I'm very passionate about the topic today and appreciate the opportunity to kind of share my thoughts about this. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, John. Kyle?
Yes, also delighted to be here. This is a topic that is close to my heart. I'm Kyle Robinson, and I'm the co-founder and partner at WellZesta. We launched about 7 years ago, but I've spent the majority of my career, probably the last 20 plus years, in senior living, working in a variety of roles for a consulting firm, as well as working in roles at different communities across the United States. So have been able to see how technology and communication can really come together and have a wellness piece incorporated into it in order to really have the best results for our communities. So delighted to be here and so honored that one of our client partners is going to be able to share today as well.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Cameron?
Yeah, Rob, thank you for having me here. I'm with Presbyterian Village Athens a little over 2 years, joined the organization. Prior to that, 12 years operations and development from skilled nursing, assisted living, hotels, healthcare, restaurants. It's a little bit of an amalgam from experience, but I'm excited to be here and have these conversations and talk a little bit more about the mediums of what we're using and how we're moving the needle in the world and day and age of COVID. So thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. And last but not least, Gwen.
Hi, Rob. Thank you so much for having us here today. I'm Gwen Hardy with Presbyterian Homes of Georgia, and I serve as the Chief Operating Officer. I've had the privilege to serve the Presbyterian Homes for the last 27 years, and certainly the last 18 months, I would say, have been our most challenging, but we have looked at different tools that have been able to help us sustain and look at what we can do going forward. So we're happy to share those today. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Gwen. And prior to jumping in here, again, I would like to thank all four panelists for taking the time to help prepare their presentations, participate in blogs, to share some of their feedback with all of you in the field, and obviously to take the time here to share their insights with you. So thank you to all of you. I'm Rob Love. I'm the president and owner of Love & Company. And with that, let's jump on into our content. So Gwen mentioned that the last 18 months have probably been the most challenging in many ways from an operating perspective. But in many ways, they've also really worked to help change the dynamics of the field that we are all in. And quite honestly, from a perspective that just makes it much harder for our communities and organizations to compete going into the future. We have so much more competition coming up from so many more places. We used to think of, the competition was the other life plan community in town. And of course, the biggest competition was really the consumer's home. But the competitive landscape has just changed so much. Over the last 10 to 15 years, there's just been tremendous growth on the rental independent living side, with a number of large providers developing pretty impressive communities, throughout major metropolitan areas in the U.S. But as we said, home is also remains a significant competitor. There have been a broad number of services offered, including things like continuing care at home by our own field, which are designed to enable people to stay at home and provide services in their homes, telehealth, home care, and so forth. Beyond that, when we look at these last 18 months, as we all know, our target market that 18 months ago may not have been very, video conference friendly or app friendly, has now really learned that there are lots of ways to get transportation, to get things done around their house, like Handy, to get meals, like DoorDash, even people to go shopping for them. So a lot of the basic services that we've always said, come to a life planning community and you'll have these provided for you. There are a lot of other ways to get these services today, dramatically increasing that competitive environment. Also, active adult communities. I used to think many years back that it was great to have a lifeline community near an active adult community because it was a natural feeder. That's not really the case anymore. The active adult community has been specifically targeting the aging boomer market and developing homes that are designed to age in and have the technology resources to be able to provide services and tracking and health support in the homes. And speaking of health support and technology in the homes, the whole smart home healthcare field has, it is growing dramatically, as this chart shows, a projected compound annual growth rate of almost 40% over the 5-year period from 2018 to 2023. So all of these things are coming together to create so many more options for the aging population, which leads to the question, what can our communities do? How do we need to evolve to really stay relevant and viable in the years ahead? And that question then leads to, what can we do that's meaningful and better than any of those other alternatives? Well, in part one of this series last month, we had a great panel, Tom Mann of Morningspark, Mike Kivov of One Point Partners, and Love & Company's own Karen Adams participate in talking about the continuum and the future of the continuum and a focus on integrated wellness and prevention instead of just a care model. It was a great session. If you weren't able to join us then, you can visit loveandcompany.com webinars and you'll be able to watch that there. And today is part 2 of this, of course, and that's our focus on social engagement and connection. With that, I will hand it over to John to lead us off and share a little bit more about the importance and the science behind social connection. Well, John, let me hand this over to you. There you go.
Thanks, Rob. So this value proposition that includes social connection, why is this important? So I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the science behind the importance of social connection. I'll talk about some of the industry challenges. I'll talk about why social connection can act as a differentiator. A lot of those competitive pressures that are coming onto the industry, one of the advantages that life plan communities have that some of this other competition doesn't have is a sense of community belonging and intentionally creating this social connection. So it's something that life plan communities can do, and it's something we should be doing. And so how do organizations pivot from this care model that we're used to operating under to this vitality model that we need to operate under going forward? And I'll also give a couple of case studies of organizations that are making this pivot currently. So one of the things that Rob mentioned was COVID-19. And what it has done is I think it has accelerated the future. What I mean by that, I think it has forced the industry to face some challenges, but also to possibly embrace some opportunities that were going to be out there. And we have this opportunity to accelerate into that direction. And the social media and also the press have done a pretty good job of making everyone more aware of the importance of social connection. Quite frankly, you must have had your head in the sand if you don't realize now how important social connection is. There's 2 things that I think most senior living providers would agree on right now is that potential members or residents have 2 fears. One is infection risk, but the other is social isolation. There have been some horror stories where some providers have not really done a good job of creating an opportunity for social connection because they were so concerned about infection risk. Well, going forward, we're going to have to be able to address both fears. In fact, some doctors would even say that probably the social isolation in some ways was worse than the infection risk that we're actually trying to protect people from. So, and I'll talk a little bit more why that could possibly be the case and the science behind that. So back in 1943, Maslow wrote a book called The Theory of Human Motivation. And in that book, he came up with this theory, this hierarchy of needs. And right in the middle of that hierarchy is this need to belong, this need for social connection, even to the point that people are willing to give up their safety needs and these physiological needs to have a sense of belonging and social connection. That is how powerful that need is. And since Maslow has come up with this theory, there have been a lot of books written about this. One of the, I think, books that kind of kickstarted this whole theory of social connection and loneliness was this book written in 2008, Loneliness, Human Nature, and the Need for Social Connection, that kind of kicked this off. And I'm going to read a passage in this book that I think is very powerful. So in the studies that they've described in this book, there's only one force that could impair self-regulation enough to disrupt both thinking and behavior. This disturbing, dysregulating force is a fear rooted both in each individual's earliest moments of life and in the earliest moments of our history as a species. That overwhelming fear is the terror of feeling helplessly and dangerously alone. And since this groundbreaking book was written, there have been a lot of other books written. I know most people are familiar with Brene Brown. She's got an incredibly popular blog. She's written lots of books. Braving the Wilderness talks about the need to belong and how social isolation can really hurt people. John Leland's book, when I heard about this book from a CEO of a multi-site recently, who went to a conference and heard John Leland speak. And this is a book about him following 6 households over the age of 85. And then that book, he talks about the importance of social connection as well. And then Vivek Murthy, who was one of our most recent Surgeon Generals, wrote a book in 2020. Actually, it came out right in the middle of COVID. An incredible book that talks about social connection and the need for social connection and the science behind it. And then finally, even the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, partly funded by AARP, came up with this textbook on social isolation and loneliness in older adults. Again, another really good book if you want to learn more about the science behind how loneliness can really impact people's wellness. There are other studies that have come out. Most people are probably now familiar with the Blue Zone study that studied regions around the world where people live longer and healthier lives. And in that study, the number one factor to longevity and wellness and happiness was social connection. There was a Harvard longitudinal study that came out, I think in 2016-17, that started following JFK's class at Harvard and has been following these young men over the last, 70 years, in addition to studying some of the lower income young adults in Boston. And again, out of all of the factors that can impact health, happiness, and longevity with social connection. Mather has come out with a study that really pointed to social wellness being the most impactful factor that impacted people's health and happiness and longevity. And in fact, most seniors that live in life plan communities now really do point to social wellness as the number one factor as to why they're happy that they moved into a life plan community. In fact, the reason I'm very excited about this topic is my in-laws have been living in a life plan community now for going on 16, 17 years. When they first moved there, I think it was about 3 or 4 years after they moved there, I asked each of them at lunch one day what was the thing they most liked most about living here and what they liked least about living there. And after thinking for a few minutes, my mother-in-law said, the friends and social connections that we've made here. And my father-in-law agreed. I said, what do you like the least about living here? And she said, watching those same friends pass away every year. But she said, I'd have it no other way. And so that's when I realized that the social connection was probably a value proposition that we don't talk about enough. And so as a result of that, I wrote several white papers on this subject and have talked about this at many, many conferences. And it's a 3-part white paper series. The first part talks about the science and the nomenclature behind understanding social connection. The second white paper talked about the obstacles that keep life plan communities from embracing this as a value proposition. And the third white paper talked about some strategies and tactics in order to move forward in adopting this as a value proposition. And specifically, when we talk about some of the obstacles that stand in the way of embracing this as a value proposition, the 3 that I point to are lack of awareness, fear, and hubris. let me give you a couple examples of lack of awareness. I spoke to a CEO about this topic several years ago, and he said to me, John, I don't even know what social connection is. And most people would probably define it as different things. And unfortunately, he's right. We don't even know how to talk about it. And then I spoke to a sales counselor about this topic, and we got on the subject of healthcare navigation coordination and also social connection. And she mentioned that we do a great job at this. And I said, so even if you do a good job of this, do your sales counselors talk about it? Well, we don't talk about it with potential members or residents, because if we tell them that we could create a much more robust social life and we're intentional about creating social connections, we might feel like, we might make them feel like they don't currently have a good social life. And so it was like, so you don't talk about this as a value proposition because they're afraid of offending potential residents that could move in. And so I think the reason that she was afraid to talk about it, she doesn't know how to talk about it. And so I think one of the things we have to do is be more aware of how to talk to this about people without feeling like we might be offending them. There was a community in New Hampshire that really took this very seriously, and they put together a resident council to find ways to intentionally increase social connection within the community. So how do you do that, right? First of all, you have to kind of ask yourself the question, well, the things that we're not doing well. And one of the things that was surprising to them is that one of the areas that created more social isolation than anywhere else in the community, believe it or not, was the dining room. Well, how could that happen? Well, a lot of residents have hearing issues, and the background noise in the dining room made it very hard for them to be able to hear other residents at the table. So guess what they would do? They would just shut down because they felt like it was embarrassing that they couldn't hear very well. And so that created a socially isolating situation. So they ended up adopting technology. I won't get into the details, that made it much easier for residents to be able to hear over the noise in the dining room. And it made a world of difference. There are a number of residents that just said once they made that change, it changed their lives. So, this lack of awareness, one of the silver linings to COVID-19 is hopefully now more communities are aware of this. Another is hubris. There was a community that had a resident services counselor that realized that residents wanted more purpose and social connection. And one way to do this was an inside-outside volunteer program where residents could volunteer at not other nonprofit organizations in their service area. And when this employee went to the executive team, the CEO, about this idea, the CEO said, "We don't do that." I kid you not. And then there was another community in Florida that was going to participate in an engagement survey, and the CEO wanted to just do a preliminary survey first. And what this was going to measure was resident engagement and being heard, being connected, and being fulfilled. When the preliminary survey came back, they had such bad scores that the CEO canceled the survey because he didn't want his board or he didn't want residents to feel like the executive team or the management weren't doing a good job. So that's the fear of facing, some of the challenges that all of our communities have. Two organizations that are embracing this, Two Life Communities in Boston and Enso Village, a Kindle affiliate in California, are doing a great job of this. I won't get into the details, but they really believe that their value proposition really is social connection, purpose, and healthcare coordination and navigation. There's a for-profit case study, Atria, that Rob mentioned. Before the pandemic even hit, Atria started pivoting to this new value proposition, and they did a number of things to make this pivot. And then when COVID-19 hit, they basically said that, wow, what COVID-19 has done is it made us definitely happy that we already started this pivot, because COVID-19 has basically affirmed what they are trying to do. The other thing that's coming out of this is they're realizing that with this new value proposition, they can serve the middle market more efficiently, especially with embracing technology. And I know that Kyle's going to talk about that in a minute. Billie Jean King, who has a relative at one of their communities, says it best when she says that what Atria is about is being connected to others. So again, not only are some nonprofits getting this, but a lot of the for-profits are getting this as well. One community that is making this pivot is Williamsburg Landing. I've actually presented with Greg Storer on this subject at a couple of conferences. And they started with this in terms of rethinking what their mission and vision should be, in terms of who we are, who we serve, and what we want to become. And I know that Gwen's going to talk about this as well when she talks about how Presbyterian Homes of Georgia is making this pivot too. And some of the specific things that Williamsburg Landing has done is creating an Inside to Outside volunteer program, intergenerational opportunities. What they've really done also is educate staff on the benefits of social connection. They've also created a residence care coordinator position. And so these are some of the things that other organizations are doing. There's a lot more specifics I can talk about. We don't have time today, but I know that Presbyterian Homes of Georgia is going to talk a little bit more about this. What I'd like to do now is have Kyle talk about technology and how you can leverage technology to really intentionally create more social connection in your communities. Kyle?
Super. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Great background that will lead us into our next discussion here. All right. If any of you were on part one of the webinar series, Tom Mann was a presenter, and he made this quote, and it just struck me as a part of the audience listening to it. He said to the senior living leaders in the audience, "The wolf is at your door." And I thought, wow, okay, what are we going to do about that wolf? And so we talked a little bit more about why the wolf. And what that looked like. So again, kind of talking to all these organizations who we never thought of as competitors, now coming in and feeling different spaces that perhaps we filled at one time. So small examples, but Walmart getting into this, and Google, and of course Amazon. We have the whole home care section and the work they're doing, Best Buy, and all of the way that they can keep technology in people's homes, even care.com, something like that, coming in and replacing our workforce by being able to do it for less expensive or in a different way. So kind of thinking through all of this, wow, all of these companies do great things. Probably all of us are users of many of these companies ourselves as individuals, and we certainly are happy that they're doing great work. The thing about it is that struck me was, why don't we instead invite the wolf to join us? So we can certainly beat them in many respects, but we can also invite them to join us. The neat thing about how Life Plan communities are set up in particular is that we can close that loop. We have the ability to close the loop on so many of these things and really watch the resident or the member take the whole experience and really make it happen. And if they ever run into any trouble at any level along the way, we're able to jump in and fill that gap with our staff, with our services, with our programs, with our products, and with the way that we are strategically planning as well. This came out of a Perkins Eastman white paper, and it was a sentence that struck me as how we tie this together. So again, the core value proposition of seniors' wellness, safety, and the opportunity to live a social and engaged life ensure the sector's long-term viability. So everybody's talking about that, the viability of our industry and what that means and where we need to change. We certainly need to be forward thinking. We certainly need to, stick to our roots in certain spaces as well. But being able to hone in on what it is that makes the biggest difference in the individual's life and how we can do that differently as time progresses. And to do it quickly. A lot of times we have great intentions, but those intentions kind of get shattered. This is a long list. I know you're not supposed to put this many bullets on a page, but I thought, technology is something that often gets a great rap and sometimes a bad rap. But I was thinking through the 10 different ways. How can we just take technology itself? It doesn't matter what kind of platform that you're leveraging necessarily. There are certainly ways to pick different types of platforms that are better suited to your organization. But technology itself can do certain things. Scale comes to mind. So the nice thing about this is you can extend your reach. You certainly are serving those who are within your walls right now, but you can extend that reach way beyond and do it highly scalable for little amount of money. You can also really, it's accessible during isolation periods. We obviously saw this during COVID. The things that we could not do in person, we then could do when we were on isolation. And there will be more of that, probably in a different kind. And I don't know necessarily what it will look like, but you have a taste of that now. It also is accessible with people who have limited mobility. So that is something that they can use every single day. We are big on this and embarking a huge venture on WellZesta's end about reaching people beyond their walls. So a lot of home and community-based services and how do we do this? Part of our goal is to also bring those wolves in and hone in on what people do best. But then we are the ones who are really providing and tailoring the services because we, your audience the very best. Intergenerational connectedness, nobody would say it's a bad thing. We know it's a good thing. I find more and more that people are just delighted to see all different ages and stages. So to be able to allow technology to help you do that. We're doing that right now. I'll give just a really small example, but we're doing it with 4 generations from our home. We have grandmother, a mother, daughter, granddaughter. So it's kind of cool to see technology being used in that way. It also allows for you to extend your products and services. Back in the day, my fear was always that we were bringing in the majority of our money from monthly fees and entrance fees. Where can we also get more reserves, more cash coming in? How can we have more revenue streams coming in? And technology can allow you to do that and do that very well and have an extended reach to do that. One example is, getting out food to people that are within your neighborhood or bringing people onto your campus that normally would not be there with some kind of event and kind of keep that into your planning, not just a one-time thing. It also promotes one-to-one connectedness. We hear a ton of testimonials, if you will, from residents that say that they use our products and it helps with social isolation. Some of them are talking about using it one-to-one with just one human being, and some of them are talking about using it within a small group or group connectedness as well. And then I always say none of us know everything. So find this subject experts at whatever topic you want to talk about. And what I love about technology is you can reach that topic. Maybe that subject expert lives in Japan. Well, you can reach him or her in Japan and put that into your programming and service. And then, of course, it connects. So, with ours, we have an operating system. You can layer on different things, and it allows you to use the best of the best that people are out there building and serving. And then on the staff side, staff are so overwhelmed on a daily basis, especially this past year, that operational efficiency of any kind is helpful, and it frees them up to do what they love to do best. And, just having one conversation with them, get them in a room, they'll tell you what that looks like. Finally, just a little bit for those of you who are familiar with WellZesta, we'll hear just a little bit more about it, but we are a technology company, a software company, and really have engagement platforms that do 3 main things. One, we help to help to nurture sales. So there's a sales piece in what we do. We reduce employee turnover, and we help with social isolation in elder care. We work within the senior living market per se. We also work with veterans, and we work in the home care space. One of our ways that we recently brought the wolf into our space was we kept seeing that a lot of people were needing help in the home care space related to technology. So we built an app. We call it Care for the Caregiver, and it's a way for those people to connect. The interesting piece is a lot of those individuals work at our Lifeline communities. And so all of a sudden you have a caregiver that's using the app, and then you have a senior or member who's using the app, and it's on the same back end, and there's some interesting synergies that can happen there. So how do you measure all of this? How do you know if it's working? Most people that I talk to in the C-suite, they want to know, all right, what's my ROI? I'm going to spend this much money to do this. How do I know that it's helping me? How can we really begin to see some transition? So we have a variety of ways that we help you with that. We are strong on data analytics. Many software companies can do that and do that really well because we can capture data quickly, we can aggregate it quickly, and we can build certain things. A lot of artificial intelligence, for example, that's built in that can do things more quickly than the average human being. But a few things on that. The word intention kept coming back to me. I don't know if you know, was this Walt Dwyer and his power of intention, and whether you like that concept or not, it's all about taking action and engaging, and that you can, once that action is taken, it can be repetitive. So what we do to begin to measure things like social isolation is we on the back end are seeing how people are interacting with the platform and with each other. And so when you begin to see dyads and triads forming, that is causing transitivity, which is a building block of community. So if I'm connected to John, and John's connected to Cameron, and Cameron's connected to me, we all of a sudden have a strong triangle triad. And then there's this ripple effect that technology allows you to just ripple out. And then you're able to see who are your influencers, who are people who are maybe at risk for social isolation. You can begin to do things like measure that isolation. So first, I want to show you my beautiful grandmother just turned 100. Actually, she's 100 and a half. I just like sharing real stories. What's interesting about her is that she is now a user of Well Zesta Life at a community in North Carolina. And so I've gotten to see this from a whole new lens, being a co-founder of a company. And then also, I want her to have the best experience too. And by the way, if you live at a Lifeline community and eat a salad every day, you get skin like that. So she tells me. So I did a small questionnaire recently and just thinking, what does social engagement mean to you? And went around and asked different residents and members this question. And two main topics came out. One was that the lines of in-person community versus virtual community are becoming intertwined, which is, we're probably all used to it, but this age demographic and this group are really intertwining it, and they're talking about it at the same time, which is kind of cool. The other is that the perceived positive value of social engagement looked like it was increasing with one's age. So an example I could give to you of that was, all right, if I have a 15-minute or 5-minute phone call with my wonderful 16-year-old daughter on FaceTime, happy to see me, I'm happy to see her, but it's a short interaction. We aren't probably talking about much substance. I'm one of how many people she's going to talk to that day, and we finish up our conversation and it's done. A 5-minute FaceTime conversation with my Mimi, who's 101, is a whole different ballgame. She prepped for it. She's ready for it. She's thinking about what we're going to talk about. We have some topics we're going to talk about. She might get even tearful when looking at me because she's, hasn't seen me in a while, or we might laugh about something. And so this level of using technology in a way to socially connect it just comes up to a whole new level. All right. And then lots of words on this slide as well. But if you're not familiar with the Global Wellness Institute, please follow their work. They're just always doing great work out there. But they do a series on mental wellness, which John talked a lot about social wellness, which is certainly important. We look at 8 dimensions of wellness and help our organizations to have a well-rounded look at that, and then drill down even further with our electronic wellness record to see what's really working for each individual. But I'm sort of stuck on emotional and mental wellness and spiritual wellness, because I think it's the heart of where we can go and need to go to really make a positive difference in somebody's life. And if anybody can do it, it's Life Plan Communities. But one piece of this, as they were looking at communities, so these are not senior living communities, these are just communities at large. There were 3 things that they said they deemed had, in order to be well, you had to have these 3 things. One was environmental consciousness. Our architects do an amazing job at doing sustainable development and having really interesting ways for us to connect socially, et cetera, and doing the biophilia and all the neat things that they do. And then there is the holistic wellness piece. And we certainly are, our life enrichment team, they do an amazing job with that and offering programming and also the facilities. But then the social connected piece was the third. And so really being able to have that foster your intergenerational socialization and connectivity among the individuals. So great stuff from them. If you don't know them, go check them out. This was just also funny. As I was asking those questions, here's some real feedback from residents. So I said, what does social connectedness mean to you? What does social engagement mean to you? So we had one lady that said, I realized how much I took for granted. It's how much I took seeing a friend for granted. But now I'm on FaceTime and I'm able to socialize. So this was during the pandemic and really seeing that as something that was helpful to her. A male age 72, as long as I'm part of a community, whether that is on campus or online, then I'm staying healthy. So this realization that I don't care if it's virtual or not, that blurring of the lines was in the way he was thinking about it. Another one, when people like, comment, or share my posts when we are engaging, I don't think about it as impacting my life. It's just part of my everyday life. So again, becoming more normalized in some cases. And this one cracked me up. Social engagement is about navigating relationships. Navigating too many can make you crazy, but not having enough meaningful ones can kill you. And that was a male age 80. And I think he's right on with that approach. All right. And then just want to show 5 trends and then hand it over to you to the Georgia team. So during the last year, something that was important to us, or what are we seeing differently as people are using our app? It can be any app, but it's always good to, if you're working with an organization, especially a software company, ask them what they're doing in order to learn what's happening, in order to stay ahead of things. What kind of work are they doing behind the scenes to really stay in the know? One of them was our time in app. So before COVID, average time that a resident, by the way, our average age is 84 years young. So an average 84-year-old was spending 25 minutes a day in app. During the peak of COVID, it bumped up to 53 minutes a day. That age demographic, we saw a big jump in the 80 to 90 year olds, especially males. So some interesting things there. That means they're reading it, they're looking at it, et cetera. We'll show this similar stat, but hats off to Cameron and his team, because they have some amazing statistics. They leveraged it as a brand new community coming in. So residents were using it before they moved in. Some stats for them. 92% of their residents use it on a daily basis. They have the events that they're doing. They're collecting feedback. Of course, real-time feedback is something that's important. And they have a 4.6 out of 5. And then they're also receiving wellness points, which is great. And that's a whole nother thing that you can do to increase engagement and socialization. Content, we upped our content that we are doing. We do creative digital content, both curated and created. People were consuming it, especially videos, which was great. They're hungry for that. some of the topics that we saw residents really attracted to, a lot of it had to do with things like mindfulness, devotionals, anything related to anxiety relief, mindfulness, getting out in nature, things that were related to that. That was really important to them. And this is just showing a little bit of it and how they can access it. And then virtual events, of course, this was nothing new. It wasn't a surprise. But the one thing that we did see were residents were becoming more involved in this and choosing what they wanted to do. So, there's always this fine line of how much do residents do versus your staff. And so if you can come to a nice equilibrium there, it's always fantastic. But certainly bumping up our creative events and lifelong learning and really hearing what people want to do and taking it to the next level is going to continue to be something that sparks their interest. And then fourth, we saw a lot of health journaling. We added a component in the platform where they can say that they went for a walk or they went and had a conversation with a friend, and they can get points for doing that. Again, this idea that people don't just live on our own campuses, that we can really engage people outside of the walls of our campuses and that they have lives outside of that. But if we can capture some data for that, we can improve our services, we can improve our programs. Okay. And then more on technology, that people wanting more on wearables and things like that as well. Finally, we saw expanded networks, the ability to really reach family and friends. We have a whole family and friends piece now that get the family and friends involved, making it really easy for them. It also lessens the burden on the staff. And then this is probably no news to many of you, but I think the role of new jobs in technology are going to continue to evolve, and also a stronger attention to kind of strategic technology planning. We've been talking about it for years, but I think we're going to really see it, now and in the future. So just a little bit about how we're doing on our end. Happy to answer questions if you'd like, but want to show where the rubber meets the road, and delighted to have one of our client partners tell a little bit more about the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Kyle. I am Gwen Hardy again with Presbyterian Homes of Georgia, and social connection is such an important part of Presbyterian Homes of Georgia and what we do within our organization. And as we look at what we are, I'll just give you a brief overview. We are a total of 6 facilities. We have 3 life plan communities and 3 affordable housing communities, and they each have their own challenges in terms of social connectiveness all across our organization, and especially as we discussed over these past 18 months. And as we've looked at that social connection and action for the residents of Presbyterian Homes of Georgia, we've really tried to stay true to our mission. Our mission is a very small but powerful mission statement, in that we are a Christian ministry providing exceptional services to enhance the quality of life for our senior adults. And we focused on that quality, and especially during this time of isolation, we've seen the decline and how important it is that we work through that. Our philosophy of aging is that holistic approach of mind, body, and spirit. And technology has grown to be an even larger part of our organization over these past few months. We truly have resident and staff engagement. We have a culture of caring. That's what we have been set for these last 72 years that we have been in operation. And with that culture of caring, we have a motto in hiring of where good skills and a great attitude are important. And after one is hired, it's truly where a caring employee makes the difference. And we've seen that over and over during this pandemic, of how being connected and engaged with our resident and staff truly has made a difference in the lives of who we serve. As we look at the different ways that we engage through social connectivity, we're delighted that we've been able to partner with WellZesta, and Cameron will share just a little bit more with you about how successful that program has been. We also use for our Alzheimer's and dementia residents some therapeutic program with a simple companion that can have a trusted voice component, various structure for those with Alzheimer's and dementia. Our resident technology group has been very important in the process of the social connectivity. They've gotten together, they've learned to use Zoom, they've learned to use Microsoft Teams, and to stay connected in that way. Pre-COVID, our residents had very much an engaged lifestyle with our local school system here in Cobb County at our Austell facility. And with that, they would go and they would read to children and really be involved in homework and those type things. And through the technology, they have been able to continue that connection. And that connection has been very important in the intergenerational connection between those students and our residents here on this campus. At all of our campuses, we've been able to continue with virtual church and chaplaincy programs, which is a huge component and a need for all of our residents. Our wellness was able to continue even when our actual wellness center had to be closed due to COVID. We've been able to continue those programmings. And we've seen an increase in the number of people that actually utilize wellness. And I think that will be proven later. We've even seen that with the WellZesta program that we use. Book clubs have been able to continue, dining committees, hospitality committees, all of those things as they have learned. And it's been comical to be able to see all of us learn how we use technology at a greater way, in a greater way. We also have virtual concerts. Not only does our chaplain do various things with that, our activities. We have had the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. We've had various concerts that have been live streamed for our residents. So we have engagement at the bedside for entertainment for all of our residents at all levels of care in the continuum, with whether it be assisted living, personal care, memory support, skilled nursing, or the independent level. Our staff have been very engaged with different apps in order to stay connected with their loved ones, for our residents and their loved ones. At all levels, we have assisted with that. We've also used a large component of telehealth. We've used Zoom, we've used FaceTime, WhatsApp, Skype, many different ways that we have been able to provide folks that service of being connected. And then not only that, but certainly our virtual marketing and sales has changed over these past 18 months. And many residents and families have been able to see our community and decide to move with us based on their ability to see the community virtually and be connected. So as we look at all of the different environments that we've had and the ways that we have been able to connect, we believe at Presbyterian Homes that that's very important. We've really looked at, during this pandemic, it's caused us to rethink our strategy and to look at the difference between that traditional care model and that vitality model. We are having conversations with our senior leadership, with our board of trustees, that's really surrounding how we take this forward, how we move it to the next level, and what will work best for the future of our organization, as we have all seen a decline, especially in skilled nursing. And so what will that look like? How do we engage current and prospective residents going forward into the future? The WellZesta that Cameron is going to share has caused me just to have a smile on my face to see how many people on our new state-of-the-art campus in Athens are really utilizing the program there, and the benefit that it has, and that it can be utilized 24 hours a day if they so choose. I have one resident on that campus that shared with me that he uses his free time in the evenings to read the bios. And that way, when he is able to be introduced to someone on campus, he knows about them, he feels that he knows them. We've seen so many things happen in terms of how groups have come together in order to meet each other virtually, even before the community opened, and then after it opened, to see them, their like interests, to be able to come together. So social connectivity is such a part of our culture, and even more so a part of our culture now than it ever has been in the past. And we see, as we change and move with that, change is very important. And to keep our folks connected, not only to our staff, but to each other and to their families, that will really make a difference as we move forward. So Cameron, I'd like to turn it to you at this point in time so you can share more of the wonderful things that we have experienced through our use of WellZesta on our new campus.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Gwen, for that highlight and overview. I wanted to back into this a little bit before I'd like to just kind of give you a canvas, if you will, the project and kind of how we fit more so in that focus of the vitality model versus the care model. So we put the shovel in the ground in the fourth quarter of 2018. We opened February the 1st. We're situated on about 80 acres. There's 216 independent living residences, and there's 100 healthcare units. That's comprised of 40 skilled nursing beds, all private rooms, 30 memory care, all private, and 30 assisted living. And then obviously that's housing what we call the Village Center, which has all the normal amenities that you would see, from the wellness side to the chapel to auditorium, pub, of course. And so it's when we went into this sales stage and looking at the depositors and whatnot and getting into engagement, this is pre-COVID, obviously. So let me get a hold of the controls here. Sorry. So during the construction phase, it's pre-COVID, and we were able to, have that experience. We had a sales office. We didn't have a physical plant. You didn't have a tangible experience to actually see your unit, maybe. But in this world, you normally offer, say 1, 2, 3 different options to pick your granite countertops and your cabinets and things of that nature. We did that, but we went above and beyond by entertaining personal customization. We increased square footage. We enclosed porches and made it a sunroom with air conditioned space. And that led to a retainage aspect where people were spending on average $12,000 in non-refundable upgrades, all the way up to $200,000 plus in non-refundable upgrades. And so there was some sweat equity in the game for these depositors. That was pre-COVID again. And you'll see as we talk about our cancellation rates, how that helped on the back end. So in that process, though, folks were coming in. This is pre-COVID. They're picking out their selections. We had a design coordinator who's actually being invited to go over to their homes and curate the look and the feel maybe of what they want to have in their homes. So we really did some things differently. And we got that relational equity up front, obviously, before getting into the COVID world that we're in now. We also had the typical meet your neighbors. Once we got to a high sales rate and we had a number of folks, we had some gatherings. We'd go to clubhouses, the typical, and we would have highlights, drone footage, progressional type photos of the progress being made. Eventually, we sent folks out and we did some tours, some hard hat tours, if you will, to keep them, together in groupings. And we would rotate the groupings as well so folks would get to know their neighbors. You can see here we talk about offering interactive maps. Simply put, we just provide an opportunity for folks to connect with each other and say, "Hey, Gwen, you're my neighbor. It's nice to meet you, and maybe we have some of the same like interests, and let's get to know each other before we move in." Now, I think it's important to note the residents didn't know up front that we were going to have WellZesta as a part of this model here. So we were entertaining several companies. WellZesta obviously being the one of choice, but sorry, let me back up. Bear with me. Okay. But in that we went through this process and we found WellZesta. We saw the back end of what WellZesta offer. I think I looked at a host of maybe 10 different companies that maybe had the same real estate, maybe had some shiny icons and buttons, but what really was the marketing differentiator, if you will, in this was WellZesta had the back end data, and I could see the engagement level. I could see, maybe John's attending yoga, maybe John quit attending yoga. Why is that? And then it issued a touch point from our staff to then have a proactive versus a reactive measure, if you will, in our programming. Maybe it resulted in a pivot. Maybe it resulted in the change of his condition. Maybe there was something undiagnosed that we needed to get diagnosed and put that person in the right treatment plan, or maybe in a different healthcare setting or things of that nature. So it's been really neat to see this come together when we turn this on. So during this piece, we curated this introduction of WellZesta. All of this was obviously virtual. And I think folks were, because they already had that equity with each other as the meet your neighbors pre-COVID, so during COVID, it was easy to transition. We benefited from that. and folks they dove right in. And we still have our IT support groups that we're doing on a routine basis. So we've got ambassadors that are residents that are subject matter experts at this point of how to use WellZesta, and they're getting together and help people, connect with each other and establish relationships with each other and knowing how to use this. It's such a neat product. And I'll tell you, I do community updates through this now. And aside from not cutting down trees with all the paper consumption that I normally would be using, I can press that button and immediately see all the names of all the folks that are reading this instantly. I can see who's engaged, who's going through this, and I can get questions immediately from that and turn around and answer that as well. And in the world that we live in now, knowing what's going on versus not knowing what's going on, the cause of anxiety. There's a study out by Harvard that I had read, and I'll kind of read through a quote here, but it's from their Harvard Center of Population and Development Studies. So their director, her name is Lisa Berkman. But basically, when you read through this, they did a combination of 148 different studies and found that people who are isolated face a 50% greater risk of premature death than those who have stronger social connections. That is a huge number. So when we dive into this, and we were kind of forced through COVID, as everybody was, to start leaning into these digital mediums. And it's been such a benefit to see this and to see how fast the residents have grasped onto this concept. And as we're seeing these engagement numbers as we go through, it's been a wonderful blessing. So we go through the sales side of things, and when we turned things on, we were working with BB&T Capital Markets, and they told us, hey, we wanted y'all to know that in the past 23, now 24 years, y'all are the fastest selling life plan community in the nation. And, we stepped back and put a feather in our hat, of course, and we're thinking, wow, and is that because of just one person? No, obviously not. We do have that 72-year reputation that precedes us that Gwen spoke about, and we have that trust and confidence in being a nonprofit Christian ministry. And so what we saw, though, was geographically where we're located, you can drive in any cardinal direction for about an hour, and we're the only solution, truly. So it was grassroots conversations where we would tap into different veins and pockets of neighborhoods where folks said, hey, I'm doing this, and let's consider this. There's just no solution in this area. So it's been really neat to see it come together that way. Again, part of this too is we furnished iPads for the residents to use as well, and I think that's an important part to consider when you're looking into this piece, and making it all a centralized location where we can put maybe some updated information there. We can create a place where you can go in and see files. You can see certain information on maybe wellness, or I can look at menus, or I need to see something from a resident handbook standpoint. And instead of me getting lost in the mix as I'm aging in place, I've got this one piece of real estate that I can dig into and find all of that information in one location. So it has been wildly successful here, I will say. I was thinking about what Kyle said with the 80-year-old who said, navigating these relationships, and sometimes there's too much noise. If you think of it like a big menu, right? But you get to pick and choose and curate who you want to engage with. And that's just like social media today on Facebook or Instagram. People are going through and kind of curating, and I don't want to go in that area anymore. I want to go in this area. And that's the benefit of this too, as well, as people are reading through the bios, as been mentioned, and saying, hey, this is somebody I'm interested in and wanting to connect. We're avoiding the isolation factor, and people are engaging on a regular basis. So now where we're at, we're looking at this information on the data side, and we're seeing, what do we need to do? Do we need to pivot our programming? Maybe I think I'm hitting the nail on the head because I've got a robust menu and I've got 100 items to pick from on activities, but maybe it's not what they want, and maybe we need to reconsider and fine tune our approach. So a little bit more detail here as we go through the level of engagement achievements that we have. We saw our most popular days are Tuesdays and Wednesdays for events. I know pickleball is a big thing here. I think everybody knows the buzzword pickleball. That's Tuesdays. We have a pub. We don't have our liquor license. It's a bring your own beer kind of deal on a Wednesday, but that's obviously a big hit for folks as they come into that space. But Kyle, I didn't know if you want to talk a little bit more about some of this data here and kind of highlight the upward trends that we are seeing and continue to see here at Presbyterian Village Athens.
Yeah, just very quickly on the back end, what's nice is that the staff are able to see, I don't know, maybe 50 different modules like 2 that you're seeing here. So you're able to say, what I like about this is the trends going up, and that's always good. So you start with, they're learning the software, they're learning the platform, they're beginning to partake in the different 10 events. They're getting the points for it. We drill down beyond just those points. It's not just points for point's sake. They're saying, what does it impact my health and well-being? So it's giving the team a lot of data. But anytime it's trending in the right direction like that, fantastic. Hats off to the team, because 94% of the residents using the app. I mean, when you compare that to other things, portals and things, that's just not even close to that. So we all work really hard as a team to get there. But trending like this is fantastic. So I think the other piece of it is, what's nice is every quarter that the staff can come in and look. Well, they can see it every day, but they can come in quarterly and really look at, all right, strategically, we want to go be here. Does the data line up and tell us that, or are we missing a mark? They can do it at this, leadership level, or they can do it at the individual group level. So what I like about data is it tells a story. And it gets the opportunity. You look at the bad, you look at the not so good, or you look at the great. And so it's all there. But congratulations to your team there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rob, you're on mute.
My bad. Sorry about that. So as we look back over everything that we've been saying today, some of you out there might be saying, this is all good things for us to do. But Rob, you started with a question saying, how do we really need to evolve to survive? Didn't use that word, but that's really kind of to remain viable, into the future. And will this really make a difference? And to end, I'd just like to share 2 points of data that we found from some research that we did a year ago in the summer of 2020. When we reached out to lead bases, we had a long survey, looked at a number of different things, really trying to gauge the psychology of the consumer and how they were responding in the pandemic. But within that, there were a couple of questions that directly related to this topic and this area. And I wanted to share the responses to you. 97% of respondents to the survey, remember, this is lead-based. These are people who have already inquired about living at a community. 97% indicated that being able to learn, teach, grow, and contribute and have more genuine fun is very desirable as they contemplate their futures. What to learn, teach, grow, contribute, that's engagement. That's connection with each other. It's exactly what they want to have in their lives. And then 85% said that they were very interested or somewhat interested in having a plan for the next 10 years that enables them to do these things. So I stopped on the word plan intentionally because we are life plan communities. That's what I assume the majority of people we have out there are. This is what we do and we can do, is help provide this environment for people to truly get a level of engagement, growth, learning, teaching. John mentioned a couple of times, volunteer programs, coordinating things like that. Gwen, Cameron, Kyle all talked about a variety of ways of engagement and building social connections. So not only is it a nice or good idea, but it is what our market is saying they are looking for, and we're ideally positioned to be able to provide these types of things to our residents and our members. So with that, we'd like to open up to questions and discussions, again, if you would go into the Q&A part of the Zoom control panel and type in, whatever questions you may have for us, we would appreciate that. I'm going to take this back to, let me do one quick thing here. All right. I want to back up and make sure that stays on screen in case you would like to reach out to any of the participants today. So first, there was a question that came through, John. It was an easy one for you that I didn't see it get answered. I'm not sure if everyone saw the answer, but it was, can you provide a list of those books that you mentioned to the audience for them to be able to look at? And so to our behind the scenes moderator, facilitator, Sarah, what I'd like to ask is that if we can collect those, let's go ahead and send that list out with the same email that we send to all the participants and all the registrants, with the link to the video. A second question, John, I'm going to direct to you, which I think is a little harder to answer. But you talked a lot about the challenges with fear and hubris. Those are not easy things to how would you change that in the field? Any thoughts on how we can go about a mindset change?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Rob. The first question was yes, that's the answer. I can provide those. The answer to this question is going to be a lot harder. It's, Rob, it's leadership, and it's the willingness to be vulnerable, which is really difficult. Any leadership class will talk about leaders needing to be vulnerable in order to affect change. And so that means taking some chances. It means possibly owning up to not doing things as well as you thought you might do. I will almost guarantee that every single organization, if they went through an engagement survey, would find that they're not doing as good of a job of engaging their residents, empowering their residents, and providing social connection as they might think. And I would almost guarantee that every organization is not doing as good of a job as they think they are. So one of the ways if I were, and again, look, being a CEO and executive director at a community is really, really hard. I'm not sure I could even do it. But if I did attempt to do it, and I was attempting to make this pivot from this care model to this vitality model, I would first start with getting like the C-suite together and talking about this and realizing that, okay, this is a journey we're going to start, and we're all going to have to be in this together and not point fingers and all own it, and then start to build that circle of trust going forward. So, Rob, I know that there's no magic bullet to this. It's just being able to go in and just realize that it's going to be hard, and it's going to take it's going to take trust, and it's going to you have to be vulnerable. But I think that true story I shared probably is not uncommon, that organizations aren't willing to start this process because they're afraid of what they might find out.
All right. Thank you. So I hope a little personal note I'm going to throw in here doesn't seem improper for a webinar type setting. But we have a question from Lori Hyatt. And Lori, I haven't seen you or run into you in a long, long time. So thank you for joining us today. And I hope you're well. Anyway, the question, Kyle, would come to you. I'll go ahead and read it so that all of our participants are aware of it. But does the app, as well as us, also track, or could it, residents' lifestyle outside the retirement community? Is it, or could it be connected to Apple or Fitbit wearables? There's actually multiple questions here. So let me stop there and let you answer that, and then we'll continue with the other parts of the question.
Yes is the first answer. So for the tracking lifestyle outside, we've started with small things. One of our approaches to software development is an agile approach. We always like to go in, test. We even have what we call signature focus groups where we go talk to residents. We show them A, B, C, let them give us feedback. But yes, to tracking lifestyle outside, one small example, I might have mentioned it here, is if a resident goes off and is gone for a week, then they can put in their own wellness points and how they collected them. They went for a yoga class at the bar studio, or they went and had lunch with a friend. They can put that stuff down. We call it health journaling. So they are able to put that type of information down. As far as adding on, pulling in information, certainly can do that. We have an operating system that we call StrongBand. And what that really allows you to do, from lack of a technical way to talk about it, is layer on new products and services and then be able to pull that information in. One of our philosophies is we can't build everything, but what we can do is we can be your platform where you can then leverage, hey, I'm interested in the Apple Watch because it can do all of these things. We are big proponents of the Apple ecosystem, even though we're on Android and, laptops and desktops and digital signage and all of that. But if somebody's doing something really well, and it's capturing health and wellness data, let's pull that in. So we have the ability to do integrations.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. And the rest of the question relates more to the healthcare side. Mm-hmm. Is it helpful in healthcare, again, still referring to Wellzesta, where social perceptions of staff seem disconnected with actual time use? And then on the memory care side, do you see this in memory enhancement, where social connections are invaluable, but capacity for judgment among the residents, making needs known, follow-up, and preferences are dissipating?
Well, first, I want to have a whole conversation with her. It's been a long time since I've seen you too. Lots of great questions. I would say historically, our platform, the main one that we're talking about here, has been used primarily in independent living, a little in assisted living, and then beyond your walls, home and community-based services, that kind of thing. We're seeing the need to dip down more. People want to take it with them as they age and play. So being able to do that, the experience may be different. We also have platforms that are just for the staff. So we don't want to just empower the residents. We want to also empower the staff. So there are platforms that are just for their health and wellness, just for their communication. They can have, HIPAA compliant chat built in so they can connect with human beings. They can have things that are funny and they can stay involved in what's going on with the community. So we have those that are, and the nice thing, they're all on that same back end. So from a strategic business perspective, you're able to see a lot of data with a lot of different individuals. As far as some of the questions about memory care, certainly we have partners out there who know a lot about memory care. Our CEO is a physician scientist by training, so we come at this from senior living and from healthcare. We're open to discussions about those kind of things. We like to fill needs where they have needs, but also aren't everything to everybody. So we love partnerships that make sense and are open to those discussions.
Thanks, Kyle. And John, you shared a thought along the way that Kyle touched on there about how empowering staff is really, really important. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about in my white papers is there's this avoidance of talking about social isolation and loneliness in our society. And so it's like taboo. And so when you build this circle of trust, one of the things that I think would be important is to get staff to actually understand this concept and the importance of social connection and how to identify social isolation and loneliness. And the way you do that is educate the staff and empower them, because quite honestly, the staff is going to be key to actually creating an environment where you are creating a culture of social connection and empowering both staff and residents to understand that that's part of what this community is about, is to build this sense of, this, for lack of a better word, community. And staff, I just can't just say it enough, how important it is that they be brought into this process. I will also say one other thing about that. And I said this earlier, staff is probably your greatest resource, and understanding that a lot of your staff really see working in your community as an important part of their social network, and understanding how important that is to them, and providing support to your staff also that may possibly be going through social isolation, I think is really important. So I think this is not just an important topic for residents, it's also an important topic for staff. Quite honestly, this is a very important topic for our society.
Thank you, John. So we've reached the end of our questions. I would like to thank all our participants again today who joined us for this webinar. Thank you for taking the time to learn with us today. And then especially to John, Kyle, Gwen, and Cameron. Once again, we really appreciate all of your time and efforts and your willingness to share your thoughts and experiences and vision with the rest of the field. So with that, thank you to everyone and take care.